Welcome at a new edition of the Market Reporters with my famous colleague Martin Totté.
Famous? Oh,
Yeah, we are doing it for quite some time, so
yeah, we're getting more and more famous.
So you are getting more and more famous. And some sad news to start with. That was this week that the new James Bond film won't be released this year, but in April next year.
Yeah.
And I'm a James Bond fan. And I only go to the cinemas when there is a new James Bond film. And I think I'm not the only one, because Cineworld, so that's
bad news.
Yeah, the company that has hundreds of cinemas around the world, the UK and the US, they said directly after the announcement that the new James Bond film was postponed to April, we are closing down our
that was something
cinemas.
that could save the year, maybe, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
Not a lot of productions coming out anyway. So.
Unfortunately, so that's really bad news, especially for the investors in Cineworld. Then, of course, Trump was in the news last week. He was in the news because it was found out that he had COVID-19. He was released in the beginning of this year. All kind of speculations about him, how he was standing there, how he was presenting there. But he picked up his work quite fast.
Yeah,
you can say everything about him, but he was back on track. I think he didn't lose a lot of track, by the way.
No.
And he was in the news because he stopped the talkings with the Democrats about a new package of support for the US economy.
Correct.
And in the same time, Powell, president of the Fed, he said we need extra support for the economy. It's better also for the long run, it's his opinion, that we need extra support packages for the US economy. So this is above the market. Yesterday, that was Thursday, there were some rumors that probably there will be a new package, and then the markets responded directly by going up.
Yeah.
Samsung was also in the news. They reported really good figures.
Really good figures.
Figures better than expected. They expected 10 billion won revenues, but it was 12.3 billion won, and that's mainly due to Huawei, that has, of course, by the same Trump, a ban on their sales.
Correct.
Also quite some interesting and strange, but maybe not so important news, was that I saw yesterday in I think it was in the Dutch Financial Times, that the Vatican, that they speculated in the last couple of months with probably they bought put options on the decline of the share of Hertz. Of course, the Vatican, the Catholic Church, has a lot of money, and it's controlled by the bank in the Vatican. And of course, they have some strategy what to do with it. But I think you can talk about it. But is it
ethical?
Yeah, and that's not only in our discussion, but also the Pope. He said in 2018, he said to invest or to trade with derivatives.
Yeah.
That's not ethical completely right. So it's quite strange that 2 years later, they, and I think you said it also last time, if you gamble or if you invest and you hope that the underlying is going up, it's also another approach than when you gamble or you invest when an underlying stock is going down.
Exactly, and then it's also specifically looking at the sector, in this case the travel industry, which Hertz is, I think it's not a huge lease company. The majority of their business comes from tourists renting a small car at an airport, driving around Italy or Europe or whatever, and they gamble or they bet on that company will suffer. So it's not very, you would say normally you pray for them to survive, and in this case they did the opposite.
I'm following the news, but I'm waiting for a statement of the Pope.
Exactly. Well, staying with the travel industry, so what I think was good news for Malaga is that EasyJet is opening a base here in Malaga Airport. That is good, despite the loss of 850 billion and the fact that they've announced that they possibly need more government support. So they are suffering, but they are, I think, in some sort of way positive about the future. Otherwise, you would not open another base. I think normally you see a lot of airports chopping down positions.
But are they not moving planes from another?
They're not moving. No, they're opening an extra base. Okay. They might reduce specific spots.
Then it's
I think
it's a good sign.
Yeah, it's a good sign. It's at least that they are positive. And what is interesting, Kaspar, I think I looked at the European travel and tourist branch, and there's an index. It's called the Stock 600 Travel and Leisure Index.
Yes.
So basically focused on travel industry, so airlines, rental companies, but also hotel chains, etc. And a way to approach an index or a company is to look at the enterprise value divided by the EBITDA. And we can say that if you look at statistics on general, on average, the enterprise value divided by the EBITDA on the S&P 500 is between, over the last 20 years, about 15. And if you look at the travel industry, the enterprise values are now, compared to the EBITDA, on 8.4. And that is low.
The lower, the better.
And I wouldn't say that you should put your money in the travel industry, but it is something if you, and also based on the news of EasyJet, that they are opening a base, etc. It's interesting to have a read about, to get your thoughts in a different direction.
Because if you want to do, if you think that sector or individual stocks in that sector will survive and will gain a lot in the future, then you spread your risk by not buying one company or two companies, by buying this ETF and
just
buying
focus
all
on
underlying
the entire
amount of stocks.
sector. Yeah, and I think you will agree with me that some companies will survive.
I agree with you.
Or you will never travel again. I don't think so. No? Last news from my side, Euronext bought the Milan Stock Exchange for 4.3 billion from the London Stock Exchange. I don't know if that has anything to do with Brexit, but at least Euronext now owns the Italian Stock Exchange. Interesting, because one of the main drivers to buy the Milan Stock Exchange was to get access to the MTS, which is the sovereign bond debt market, which is an interesting market and which was not really available for European investors before that.
If you look at Euronext, so under Euronext there is the Netherlands, Belgium,
the monopoly now. Lisbon
and
Paris.
Paris, but are they going to incorporate it, or is it just like an investment?
I haven't read that. I don't. And I think eventually they will.
They'll also make Euronext and so.
Euronext Milan, yeah. That's for me that sounds logical.
Okay, elections, 3rd of November this year, in 3 weeks' time. There are finally US elections. Strange year. Because of the COVID, of course, so it's a lot of online and not big campaigns with trucks in the streets. But we looked at it from a historical point of view, and we looked at the last 16 elections from 1956 until 2016. And we try to look at it and if we can draw some conclusions. I think you can draw two kinds of conclusions. You can draw a conclusion what happened in the existing election year and what happened in the year after the election.
Exactly.
It is October, it's almost November, so it's not that interesting to look at the existing election year, but we will do it. 14 of the 16 election years there was a positive yield on the S&P 500.
Just like this year.
What's the
6-point-something% for the S&P now?
Yeah. The highest one was in 1980 when Reagan was elected, was 32% to 32.5% plus, and the worst year was Obama in 2008. That was a minus of 37%. But again, that's the election year. If you look at the year after the elections, then if a Republican wins, after a Republican, we only look now at when there is a sitting Republican, because there is. So if Trump wins, then you can say, based on these figures, that next year the market will go up on average, if you look back, with 11.9%.
On average?
On average, yeah. But if Biden wins, then there is a chance that the market will go down with 1.3%.
Yeah.
And that's just based on the figures, based on the 16 elections. So, and we can talk about for a long time why that should happen. Maybe because Biden will increase certain taxes, some company taxes, and that's not good for the profits of the companies, and investors don't like it. So there are all kinds of reasons. But I think also a lot of logical reasons that the market on the short term responds on that. So we will put some in the screens, some data, so you can look at it if you see this film. But quite interesting to see as an investor, and maybe how you can use that in practice. Maybe to shift a little bit from your investments to cash. So if you believe that Biden wins, and I'm not saying if you're happy with it or not, but then maybe you can say, okay, there's a big chance that next year the stock market will go down.
Yeah.
Then you shift a little bit from your investment to cash. If you think that Trump wins and you believe that, and you look at the figures, then maybe you can invest some more money. So that's how you can look from an investing point of view on the new elections. And of course, we will follow the polls the next 3 weeks, because the U.S. markets will be in ban of this fight.
It's a tight race, I think.
Yeah. Okay. Last positive news. Zalando. Do I say it right? Yeah.
You say it right.
Thanks. And they raised their outlook this year based on profits for the second time. So they're doing extremely well, from 300 million to 400 billion euros. They're based on the stock market in Germany.
Yeah.
Because, of course, simple reason, people are still buying shoes. I think a lot of, you talked about Nike the other day.
Nike did it
2 weeks ago.
Similar, yeah.
Yeah.
But like we also mentioned it 2 weeks ago, or 3 weeks ago, that CCC, they're one of the largest in Eastern Europe. They are about to collapse.
Yeah.
So there's a big difference.
Yeah, within the sector, big differences. The people are buying a lot of sneakers because they do a lot of outside sporting. It's good,
Yeah.
but also Zalando sells them.
Yeah, absolutely.
So good news for the investors of Zalando. So positive to close down with. Thank you for watching. Thank you all. Hope to see you next week.